Alrighty friends, I am so excited for today's video and I'm trying something new. I have the microphone plugged into my iPad and then I'm gonna edit my video so that I have my voice recording over this video. And hopefully it's not that hard, but if it is too hard for me and it's a new skill that I don't feel like picking up, I'm just gonna use the audio from my camera. But I have a lot of things I want to talk about, and I want to start with my most anticipated book releases of 2025. And I think I only selected like my top 8 because I think it'd be really unrealistic for me to choose my top 25 for 2025. For one, I'm trying not to spend so much money on purchasing books this year. For two, there's only so much trust I have in my local rural library to be able to purchase all these books. So I'm going to go by category or genre and not necessarily by release date. I have my little iPad down here. She's so cute. Okie dokie. So the first category, of course, I'm going to talk about is romance. I will say 2024 was a year of romance for me, particularly in the summer, but specifically for Abby Jimenez. And I think this year I am going to be deep in my Kennedy Ryan era. The first book that I have listed is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, which is slated to come out April 1st. Does this follow any of the other books so far? I'm not really sure. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what any of these books are about. I judge books by their cover and then I read the description and then I look into who the author is, and that may be unconventional and probably even a little controversial, but I don't care. I feel like I'm well read and I feel like I read a variety of authors, so take it as you will. There might be no such thing as a perfect guy, but Xavier Rush comes disastrously close. A gorgeous veterinarian giving Greek god vibes, all while cuddling a tiny kitten? Immediately yes. In order for a book to be categorized as a romance, it has to have a happy ending. So of course, like, our main characters are going to end up together. I wonder if this title is a reference to Taylor Swift, because anytime I hear it, say you'll remember me, staring in the sunset, babe. Book number 2 on my list is Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan. I love this. I wonder if Kennedy Ryan and Abby Jimenez are friends, mainly because they're kind of similar in their romance writing style right now, and the fact that their like romance series connect in some way because of their characters. This is the third book in the Skyland series, and I am really liking the current Skyland series number 2 book that I'm reading. Basically, the Skyland series is following 3 best friends that live in Skyland, Atlanta, Georgia, USA, and each of the books follows a different best friend. But in the third book, we're getting Hendrix love story. I love her. She's like the best friend that forces you to be confident, to get out of your comfort zone, but she will be the first to take care of you and to take care of your children if something is going on. Also, I'm 24 going on 25, but I'm really liking reading romance books about older women. Women that are nearly 40 years old, going through divorces or going through some sort of crisis, who have children who are established in their careers. I'm loving it, so I'm really excited. Hendrix is, I think, one of my favorites out of the trio, but I really do like Soledad because her family is from Greenville, South Carolina. Like, that was such a quick little tidbit mentioned in the book that I'm currently reading. But anyway, I'm going to be really excited for Hendrix, and I'm also really excited to read more of Kennedy Ryan, mainly because she's writing about these 3 different women who are all best friends, but they all have such unique voices. Like, I think that is such a great mark of an author, especially a fiction author, if you can write about so many characters and they're like not the same at all. Moving on, those are literally the only 2 romance books that I am interested in right now. I might be stepping into my Emily Henry era. Maybe not, actually. We'll see. I'm kind of scared of Emily Henry. I don't know
Next
why.
couple of books are going to be nonfiction, and the first one I have listed is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This, and this is slated to come out February 25th. The description reads, award-winning novelist Omar El-Akkad's nonfiction debut, One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This, reckons with what it really means to be an American right now. After 20 years of working as a journalist covering the war on terror, the Black Lives Matter protests, and the growing death toll in Gaza, the Egyptian Canadian writer, who now lives in the US, has been disheartened by the lack of compassion and empathy he's seen from his adopted country. That was a really well written sentence. That was a long sentence. With his new book, he tries to make sense of how the promise of the American dream has become such a nightmare. Next, we have Original Sins, the miseducation of Black and Native children, and the construction of American racism. Don't know much about any of these books, once again. However, the things that I read about this book, it's talking about the institution of the US school system and how it is really used to uphold white intellectual superiority, white supremacy. And I'm sure we are going to go through a lot of different things in terms of the American education system, things that I learn about every day, things that I have yet to hear about. I hope that when I read this, there's also a sense of like, here's how you can redesign the American school system. Here's everything you need to throw out. Here is how you should restructure this. Like, I really hope there is some sort of like action step. Next, I'm so freaking excited for this one. But Fearless and Free, a memoir by Josephine Baker. Also, I'm curious about a lot of things. Like, did she write this memoir before she had passed away and they're just now posthumously publishing this? Like, who is publishing this? Who has this information? Josephine Baker took Paris by storm in the 1920s, dazzling audiences with her humor, beauty, and effervescence on stage. She became an icon. Hemingway, Jean Cocteau, and Picasso admired her. Shirley Bassey adored. I swear in all my life I have never seen and probably shall never see again such a spectacular singer and performer. From what I remember about learning about Josephine Baker is that she moved to Paris or somewhere in Europe where she became a performer, but she also was a spy for the French, I think. Yeah, she became a spy for French resistance, her celebrity working as her cover. But yeah, she served with the military, and she, in 1963, actually spoke at the March on Washington alongside MLK, which I don't think a lot of people realize. I feel like there's so much that I don't know about Josephine Baker, of course, but I am really excited to read from herself. I think she passed away in the 70s or 80s or so. Not really sure, but I don't know. This is actually pretty incredible that there's a memoir coming out about Josephine Baker. I'm so excited. If there's a woman in history you should know, it should be Josephine Baker. Next, I have a couple of books in the horror category. First, of course, being Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix, my king. This is actually already out from January 14th. My hometown local bookstore is hosting him next week, actually. I'm gonna go see him next week. And from what I've seen on social media, it looks like he's doing some sort of show. He's not doing like a meet and greet. So I'm really excited to see what he's got under his sleeve. Don't really know too much about this other than like it takes place in the 60s or 70s and it's about like unwed mothers and witchcraft. I don't know. I'll read it. It's not like Grady okay, if you're Grady Hendrix, don't watch this next part. But it's not like he is the most like Pulitzer Prize winning like world changing writer. It's just stupid fun. And every now and then I need a stupid fun book, and Grady Hendrix is that for me. Also, I actually met Grady Hendrix last year at my other local bookstore. He was there for like a actual meet and greet and signing, and my friends and I waited in line for like a couple of hours, and we were kind of like the last people in line, which I'm grateful for because that meant we had a little bit more time to talk to him. And Sage and I were like, so we have a theory about your next book. And he goes, go, like, what's your theory? And we're like, 1960s cult. And he goes, yes. And then he talks about Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. And it was just so fun meeting Grady Hendrix. And I don't know what he's got up his sleeve for this show coming up next week, but I'm excited. But that at the event is when I'll get a copy of my book, so I'll start reading it actually at the end of this month. This next book is called The Lamb by Lucy Rose, slated to come out February 4th, I believe. I think I may have gotten that date wrong, but I just saw like queer gothic horror and was like, let me add this to my list. Synopsis reads: a folk tale, a horror story, a love story, and enchantment. Margot and Mama have lived by the forest since Margot can remember. When Margot is not at school, they spend quiet days together in their cottage waiting for strangers to knock on their door. Strays, Mama calls them. Mama loves the strays. She feeds them wine, keeps them warm. Then she satisfies her burning appetite by picking apart their bodies. Cannibalism! But Mama's want is stronger than her hunger sometimes, and then a white-toothed stray named Eden turns up in the heart of a snowstorm. Little Margot must confront the shifty dynamics of her family, untangle her own desires, and make her own bid for freedom. Oh my god, wait. With this gothic coming-of-age tale debut? Lucy Rose explores how women swallow their anger, desire, and animal instincts and wrings the relationship between mother and daughter until blood drips from it. I literally only saw queer gothic horror and I was like, add this to my list. But oh my god. I think it was maybe my last video that I was like, I actually do like to read and watch media that is about cannibalism. So, I was not expecting this. This is a pleasant surprise. Last but not least is Dark Motherland, which is slated, actually, I think it's already come out, but it is a new book for 2025. But I don't know much about this author, but this synopsis is actually kind of cool. The synopsis reads: in Dark Motherland, Nepali writer has created a novel of infinite embrace filled with lovers and widows, dictators and descendants, paupers and fundamentalists, and a genderqueer power player with her eyes on the throne. In an earthquake-ravaged dystopian reimagining of Nepal. Okay. At its heart are two intertwining narratives, one of Kranti, a revolutionary's daughter who marries into a plutocratic dynasty and becomes ensnared in the family's politics. And then there's a tale of Dark Motherland's new dictator and his mistress, Rosie, who undergoes radical body changes and grows into a figure of immense power. It looks like you have a little bit of everything. It's dystopian, environmental issues, family pressures, social things. It seems like it has a little bit of everything, kind of like how Parable of the Sower has a little bit of everything. However, I'm not comparing the two, but I'm just saying it reminds me of that. Those are the 8 books that I'm very excited to try and read at some point this year. It's okay if I don't get to them. I'm going to rely heavily on my public libraries for these books, and I think I'm going to go ahead and request them on Libby, and hopefully I'll be the first ones to request these on Libby before they come out, so then I can actually have access to them pretty soon. Anywho, I wanted to talk about all of the reading challenges that I'm participating in this year, and I can't remember if I talked about this in a previous video, aka my last 2 videos, so if I've talked about it, I'm sorry. Not sorry. I'm just going to talk about it again. We have my book club bingo that I created for my friends that I get together once a month or so and force them all to read a book together. Basically, for my book club members, I have them read according to the prompts, and if you get a bingo, you get a button, and the button's going to say something along the lines of I completed book club bingo, but all I got was this button or something like that. I am going to go down the columns from left to right and just kind of talk about some of these and maybe even talk about the ones that I've already completed. But from the top, we have attend a library program, finish a book club read, a classic, read a borrowed book, or a stranger's recommendation. Now, I also put reading adjacent activities on here because I truly believe that the experience of reading is communal, can be communal, and it's just more than just sitting in your bedroom and reading by yourself, and going to your public library is a huge part of that. Next column, buddy read a book, reread a book from childhood, a book with less than 150 pages, read a book you found in a free little library, and make a playlist for your favorite read. All right, the middle column reads read a new to you genre, graphic novel, read a banned book, and read a book in a day. I have already read a banned book, and that is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Second to last column, a book from the year I worded this wrong. It says a book from the year I was born, but it should read a book from the year you were born, which was the year 2000. A family member's recommendation, which will be interesting. Not sure who my family I'm going to ask. Probably my little sister, because I know she's a reader. A book from the New York Times Reader's Choice from the 21st century. That's a long ass list, so I think I'll be able to find something there. A book set in your hometown, state, or country and go to a library board meeting. I recently read Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. Wonderful book. It is a middle grade young adult memoir, all written in poetry, and she grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, so that's wonderful. Last column, reread a book with a play, movie, or TV adaptation, a different format of reading than usual, a memoir, and a book of poetry or essays. So the first book that I read this year was actually Erasure by Percival Everett, and it has a film adaptation to it. But that's my book club bingo, and I have another bingo sheet actually. My boyfriend and I host a silent book club in Greenville, and we're doing a bingo sheet for our silent book clubbers. And honestly, it's almost the exact same thing, except we have things like attend a silent book club, subscribe to our newsletter. Oh, the only other thing that's different is read a genre you've never read before and read a graphic novel. Really excited about the graphic novel. I have Persepolis here on my bookshelf somewhere. And then a genre that I've never read before, it's probably going to be fantasy. I don't do fantasy very often. Next, we have the Free Black Women's Library Reading Challenge of 2025, which I'm so excited for. So the owner of the Free Black Women's Library, I can't remember her name right now, but every year she has this reading challenge and she provides 40 prompts. But the goal is to read at least 24 books written by Black women in a year. And so I'm not going to go through all of the prompts, but I think I'm going to go through the ones that I'm interested in and the ones I've already read. So of course we have read a romance or erotic novel, which is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, a book written for young adults and middle schoolers, Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. A book of sci-fi, speculative fiction, Afrofuturism, or fantasy, I did Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. A book that centers art making, a specific craft or artist, and I read This Long Thread by Jen Hewitt. Great book. Jen Hewitt did her own survey in the US and Canada of different artists of color and interviewed some folks, and there's some really good essays in there. It's not a book that you have to read all the way through, I think, but I did get a lot of good things out of it. The other prompt I'm working on right now is a book on body politics, body trauma, liberation, freedom, or autonomy. I love the flexibility in these prompts, and for that I'm reading Birthing Liberation by Sabia Wade. She's known as the Black Doula, and I love the inclusive language. I love the way she reminds a reader to take care of themselves as they're reading this book. But lots of great things that I'm learning. I mean, not great things, but I'm learning a lot of things from this book. I'm not going to actually count, but I'm just going to go through which ones I want to do. Definitely want to read a vintage Black feminist or womanist text before 2001, a contemporary Black feminist or womanist text published between 2001 and now, a book with LGBTQIA characters or content or exploration of gender and sexuality, both fiction and nonfiction. A book by revolutionary community activist, political organizer, or abolitionist. For that one, I think I'm going to try and finish Asada by Asada Shakur. Book by an African author, a book of history, historical fiction, or slave narrative, a book with a one-word title. I think that'd be fun to look for. A book on health or healing. This can be fiction or nonfiction. Would love to learn something in that realm. Memoir or autobiography, of course. A graphic novel or comic book series. There's a couple that I have saved on my Storygraph that I'm excited about. Collection of poetry, prose, short stories, or letters. A debut or famous author's first. I'm excited about that one. I love debut books. And last but not least, I did have a reading goal to read a book or two from a country that I've never read from before. And I did some research and I went through my story graph. And I think for me, I'm going to try and read something from Samoa by a Samoan. I don't think I've read a lot of like Oceania, like Pacific Island type books. Want to read more from African countries. There are a handful of African countries I've read from because of a class that I took called Women in Asia and Africa, which I actually have a whole video talking about all of the books that I read for that class. The video was for extra credit, and I did pass that class because of that video. But those are all of the books that I'm looking forward to in 2025. I think participating in these reading challenges will help me step out of my comfort zone as well as kind of like hold me accountable to actually make sure I get my shit together and actually read all the books that I want to read. There's just too much going on, and I think reading is a really good escape right now, and it's a great way to learn. Anyway, let me know what you're looking forward to reading in 2025, and maybe I'll add it to my list. Maybe I'll look at the cover and I'll think, wow, that's beautiful. I need to read it. I hope y'all enjoyed. Please subscribe, and I will see you at some point. We'll see if I upload a video next week. Bye, everyone.